Muli Shani Wanse, welcome and welcome back to my channel. My name is Thembi Fletcher if it's your first time here. And today we're going to be talking about the very first yang type, which is the regal and very powerful dramatic. Now, I'm going to go ahead and not necessarily put a disclaimer out there, maybe. I want to clarify the misconception about yang being masculine. That is not what it means. Yang simply means that someone is either elongated or they are sharper or they're on the larger side. And so it's got nothing to do with masculinity. You're just going to either look sharper or larger or more blunt or more softer or more petite. And those are just terms that describe our features. So I don't want you to be discouraged during this video when I talk about you being sharper or you not having any curve or anything like that to make you feel like you're masculine. You're definitely not that. So now that I've gotten that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started with our dramatics. So this is the most complete guide I'm reading from our fashiongarden.com as mentioned earlier. And so now let's begin. Dramatics sit on the yang side of the KIBBE scale and have no yin influence. They have a very elongated figure, angular, and have sharp edges. It is characterized by a long and lean silhouette with sharp, angular features. They have a prominent bone structure, often with a long neck, narrow shoulders, and a straight waistline. Their body shape is generally balanced, or it could be rectangular, but it looks pretty balanced overall. But there is an emphasis on vertical lines and sharp angles. They typically have a high fashion look and can pull off bold, dramatic styles. This is definitely accurate. And this could be considered, like they actually mentioned it here, it could be considered one of the most masculine. I don't believe that. This is considered one of the sharpest body types, rather, and along with the flamboyant natural. So the flamboyant natural is more of a blunt yang, while the dramatic is a sharp yang. And another thing that you need to understand is that your essences can have a lot of influence, and you can be perceived as somebody who may either be slightly softer or you could be a lot sharper. And I'm definitely going to try my best to give you variations of women in this body type, in this family or archetype that look quite different from one another, but obviously you're going to tell the similarities in their bone structure. When gaining weight, a dramatic will keep a defined, strong jaw. Their waist definition disappears, and their bodies will look straight. Weight tends to accumulate on hips and upper thighs, but they will still look tall. And now before I go into the characteristics, I wanted to give an example of Lizzo, who hasn't been verified by KIBBE, but I have been studying her because I was working on the soft dramatic body type last week. And I wanted to make sure that I was able to figure out whether she's a soft dramatic or a dramatic. I don't think she's a flamboyant natural because she doesn't have any width in my opinion. I don't see any width when I look at her frame, but I did notice that it could be confusing considering how she dresses. She's very versatile in the clothing that she wears, and so I really had to take time to look at her bone structure. Now, I was a little confused about Lizzo's body type because of her dressing lines. One thing I will say is she does like wearing corsets, and corsets have a way of cinching our waists in regardless of our hip to waist ratio. And so it's very easy to mistype someone based on the enhancements that they're using or when they've had plastic surgery, which I'm not claiming Lizzo has done. But I decided to look at her while she was wearing an outfit that was showing her bones and her flesh in a more authentic way, so to speak, quote unquote. That helped me to type her, or rather to have a better opinion of what her body type might be. As you can see, when Lizzo was at her heaviest and how her flesh fell on top is indicative. I'm using big words, so I hope I'm not just butchering this. Of what I think a dramatic would look like when they gain weight. We can compare her to Queen Latifah a little bit. Of course, I don't know if Queen Latifah has ever been as big as Lizzo used to be, but even though she looks a little bit more rounded, like her facial features did round out a little bit more, and her body rounded out a little bit more, I'm not seeing any waist on her, so to speak, quote unquote, like the soft dramatic, for instance, where you're able to see a difference between their waists and hips and bust. With Lizzo, I'm seeing more of a rectangular body shape. And then I wanted to further compare her outfits when she's wearing more soft dramatic lines versus full-on dramatic lines. And to me, she actually looks better in sharper, straighter lines versus the slightly softer lines or the flowier lines, in my opinion. Hence why I am putting her in the dramatic category for now. I may not necessarily be 100% accurate because I've never seen her at her skinniest. Maybe I should have looked for pictures of her when she was a lot younger or when she was at her smallest. I haven't come across any of those pictures. But let me know what you think. Do you think Lizzo is a dramatic or a soft dramatic? I'm leaning more towards dramatic simply because of how her flesh is falling on her bones. And now let's go ahead and move on to the characteristics of the dramatic body type. You are tall, elongated, and narrow. You also have a narrow frame and shoulders with sharp edges. You're going to have long arms and legs, as well as large and narrow feet and hands. Your bones are very noticeable throughout the body if underweight. That is so true. Usually you're going to have a flat bust line or a straight bust line with a straight waist and hips. Your body flesh is very skinny. So I think skinny is too broad of a word. To be a little bit more specific, I consider dramatics to have more of drier flesh. So your flesh is a little bit more taut, it's quite lean. So even when you gain weight, like for instance, I did give an example of Lizzo and even Queen Latifah. Even though they have sharper cheekbones, the flesh that falls on top doesn't necessarily round out or look fuller. It just has that leanness to it at whatever weight they're at. And so I would consider it to be a lot drier or leaner versus fleshier or lusher. I wouldn't describe a dramatic as someone who is lush or full or rounded. And then you're also going to have prominent, sharp, and angular facial features. So your nose, your cheekbones, and jawline. Bear in mind that since we are looking at African American women or women of or from African descent, we have different features compared to non-Black people. And so a lot of the times you're not always going to find that dramatics are going to have really skinny noses or really sharp noses. There will be an element of sharpness in their facial features though. So even if, let's say you have a wider nose, it may have more of a pointier tip, so to speak, or it could be longer as well. So it could be more, sometimes it could look a little bit more like the soft dramatics nose, but for the most part, you will have more of an angular or sharper nose. And then you're also going to have prominent cheekbones, I mentioned that, and a jawline. Your jawline is either pointy or very squarish. So this is very similar to the soft dramatic, and that's why soft dramatics fall in the dramatic family, because it's pretty much the same thing. Our jawlines are either pointy or they're square for the most part. They're squarish rather for the most part. You're also going to have straight eyes, which can be small, and that's not always the case, but for the most part, your eyes will tend to look straight. And you could have thin lips as well, so your lips aren't always going to be fleshy. And then you're not as dramatic if you have soft facial features, such as round eyes, fleshy cheeks, and full lips. If you have an hourglass figure, if you have fleshy arms and legs, or if you have a broad or wide bone structure, or if you have short vertical line, or if you have a short vertical line, or if you're petite. And then for dramatic celebrity examples, let's see if I can find somebody who is black on here. Oh, we have no, it's not her. I was going to say Jamie Lee Curtis. I'm thinking of somebody else. But yeah, I am not seeing any. Oh, is it Diane Carroll? Oh, Diane Carroll is a dramatic, and Diane has been mistaken for a soft dramatic for the most part, but to me she always did look like a dramatic, because for some reason her flesh to me has always looked lean. Like in as much as I think she's got quite a bit of romantic essence, her flesh has never looked lush, in my opinion, to me at least. And now I'm going to go ahead and give you some comparisons between a dramatic and two other body types that the dramatic is mistaken for. Firstly, we're going to look at a flamboyant natural, and then we're going to look at a dramatic classic. For my dramatic, I am going to be looking at the very beautiful and regal Anoki eye, because I think that she has quite a bit of romantic essence as well as ethereal essence. So to me, even though she's very skinny, she appears quite soft. So hence why I'm going to be using her. By soft, I'm talking about her lips. Her lips look a little bit more on the lusher side, in my opinion. And I think it's because of her romantic essence. And her edges, even though she's very sharp, appear a little bit softer than, for instance, than someone like Grace Jones, for instance. So let's go ahead and compare Anoki eye to Miss, who is going to be a good flamboyant natural. Let's go with Naomi Campbell, because she's also a controversial one. Miss Naomi Campbell, in my opinion, is a flamboyant natural. I've tried to put her in the dramatic family because of her strong dramatic essence, but if we look at her bone structure, it says something different. So let's go ahead and start with Miss Anoki eye's facial features. As you can see, I did mention that she has softer lips. They look a little bit more lush than that of an extreme dramatic, and hence why I think she has quite a bit of romantic essence. You can also tell that she has a sharper nose. It's quite elongated and quite pointy. It's really skinny, and that just screams dramatic to me. Her eyes are also almond shaped, so they're not extremely straight, but that is a dramatic quality in my opinion as well, or more of a yang quality. She has the high cheekbones. You can see the lean flesh on her face. She doesn't look like she would be the type of person who would have fuller facial features even if she gained weight, in my opinion. Hence why I think she's a dramatic. And let's look at her bone structure. Very lean, very angular, quite straight. Yes, she has a little bit of hip to waist ratio, but I think that's definitely her romantic essence coming through. But as you can see, it's not extreme, and it's not extreme. I'm not seeing curve in the sense of a soft dramatic where you're going to have more of a curvier bust line even when you're smaller or really skinny. I'm just seeing somebody who is quite angular and somebody who has a long vertical line. So the first thing that I see when I look at her is vertical, and I'm seeing frame, but her frame is very narrow. It's not wide at all, in my opinion. Okay, Naomi is paradoxical. She's full of contradictions to me. Not only does she have really sharp features, but she has a ton of width. As you can see in the pictures above, it's hard to be able to place her in the dramatic family because of that. And so I need to study her a little bit more before I can give my definite opinion. But for now, I think I'm going to go with my intuition and basically look at her essence. Naomi does not seem to be the type of person whom I would consider to be quite approachable or really casual. She's very fierce and she's very powerful. She has this powerful aura about her, even in the way that she carries herself. She can be friendly, but she's just not the type of person that I would want to approach first and foremost. I'd rather she opens up to me first and then I can start a conversation with her. Maybe, I don't know. Let me know what you think, but I will address her in the Flamboyant Natural video, which I'm going to be working on next. So instead, I decided to go with Miss Issa Rae because she happens to have quite a bit of dramatic essence in my opinion. Now, Issa Rae looks like more of a flamboyant natural in my opinion. She definitely has those blunt features in her bone structure, or in her facial features rather, and also in her bone structure overall. And even though she has quite a bit of sharpness in her nose and her face is a little bit more narrow, there's still a little bit of width. So she's not the type of extreme flamboyant natural who may have that excessive width or the excessive bluntness, but you can definitely tell that she isn't as sharp as Anoki Eye. And the same goes with her body. Even though she doesn't seem to have that extreme width in her upper back, her frame to me just seems a little bit more open than that of a dramatic. I'm not seeing any extreme sharpness in her shoulders, for instance. I'm not seeing extreme leanness either. She has a little bit of musculature, but everything just seems to be a lot more blunt. And even though she looks really good in sharper lines or more structured lines, they look best when there's openness to them. So they need to have a little bit of construction, a little bit of a casual quality to them, and not so sleek and polished like that of a dramatic. Hence why I think that she is a flamboyant natural. Of course, I will address more of the different variations of flamboyant naturals in the upcoming video. But for now, I think that Issa Rae definitely gives a good example of a flamboyant natural who happens to have dramatic essence. So I hope that that made sense. And now let's go ahead and compare Anoki Eye to a dramatic classic. For a dramatic classic, we're going to look at Miss Zoe Saldana. And the reason I picked Zoe is she's quite lean and she looks quite tall. But for the most part, even though she's got a bit of height to her, I tend to see just slight elongation and more of balance when it comes to her. Yes, her shoulder line looks a little bit angular as well, but I'm not seeing too much sharpness, especially when it comes to her facial features. She's quite lean, but she's more on the balanced side, and she's a little bit softer. Her features are a little bit softer than that of a pure dramatic. Dramatics are a lot more sharper than dramatic classics are. And I hope that that made sense for you. And so before this video gets too long, let me go ahead and give you the dressing lines, and then at the end I will give you some comparisons and talk about the essence of the dramatic at the end. So let's look at some overall shapes. Okay, let's look at the fabrics and materials for dramatics. Stiff fabrics that hold their shape are going to be amazing on you. They need to be either moderate to heavy materials. Avoid lightweight, flowy fabrics. You can look good in woven fabrics like tweed, satins, thick gabardines. Gabardines? That's a really big word. Structured cotton, thin wool fabrics look amazing on you. Shapes and overall outfits need to be sharp silhouettes. Geometric lines like rectangles and triangles with crisp edges will look amazing on you. They need to be tailored, sculpted, and elongated shapes and garments. Shoulder definition will look amazing on you as well. For tops, everything that is tailored or sleek. So the button-down shirt is a staple for most dramatics. You can't go wrong with a shirt like that. V necklines look amazing on you as well. Turtlenecks, asymmetric pieces, halter tops, and shirts will look good on you. For bottoms, tailored pants, dressing trousers, straight cut or long. You can definitely wear denim as well as a dramatic. I know KIBBE didn't add it to his list here, but dramatics still look good in straight jeans. I think you can pull that off. So anything that's a little bit more narrow versus something too baggy would look amazing on you. For skirts, maxi and midi length, 2 inches below the knee, not necessary. Straight cut, it shouldn't have a lot of volume. The more narrow the silhouette, the better. Dresses for the dramatic are long and tailored, maxi and midi length, sharp shoulders, straight cut. It shouldn't have a lot of volume as well. There's no need to emphasize the waist. So you really look amazing in straight lines. They don't throw you off or make you look masculine, but you actually look really harmonious when you wear straight lines. Sweaters for the dramatic are going to be lightweight, rib knits, fitted turtlenecks, sharp straight sweaters, and long cardigans. And then for outerwear, anything with structure and shoulder definition. Shoulder pads look great on you, and they always need to be tailored, ending at the mid-thigh area, or they can be long as well. For hair, makeup, and accessories, same thing. Look at your essences for that, because I think that you're going to look a lot more harmonious. Some dramatics have a lot of ethereal essence, hence they're going to look better in lightweight makeup, something that doesn't have too much sharpness to it, or something that has some shimmer to it or is a lot more iridescent. Some dramatics have romantic essence as well, so you might look better in softer, more romantic type of looks. And now let's go ahead and look at the essence of this archetype. When it comes to the essence, it's basically the vibe that you give off. And this is their essence. They are considered mysterious and majestic, with boldness, charisma, and a direct energy. And then the style directive is the regal lady. So as you can see, they do have that regality to them as they move. It's almost like they're commanding attention when they enter a room. There's also a certain level of power in their movements as well. It's quite direct, and this is more of the directness the dramatics give off. And I think that they are absolutely gorgeous women. And I hope that this video made a lot of sense to you. It's definitely a very long one. I wanted to make sure that I was able to break this archetype down for you in depth and not leave any crumbs. So I hope that I actually ate. I'm just being silly, but all the same, thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope you enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already done so. And next time we're going to be diving into the very casual, cool girl and free-spirited, flamboyant natural. And I'm excited because I have been getting quite a few requests about that one. But until then, have an awesome day, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye. Bye, everyone.